Welcome back to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Today we're quite honored to be joined by Nick Mesler. He is the Director of Operations with Evari GIS Consulting, a data technology company specializing in street lighting, ADA infrastructure, and active transportation. Nick is based in Portland, Oregon, and he specializes in transportation safety with a background in mobility planning and transportation operations. Nick manages and oversees the delivery of infrastructure and safety projects all over the United States. He attended San Diego State University and has presented at several conferences on the subject of transportation safety at night, including the Lifesavers National Conference, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals. Nick has also presented to the Federal Highway Administration and the U.S. Department of Energy Solid State Lighting Program Roadway Lighting Research and Development Panel on twilight safety. Nick is also an amateur guitarist, a cyclist, and likes to take long walks down the street. But before we get to Nick, we got to keep it easy with the Big Easy at KeystoneTech.com. Greg Garrick, what do you got with those guys?
Yeah, hey, one fixture can do it all. That's right, the Keystone Area Light with Optic Swap. The fixture includes 3 optics that are easily replaceable, and it maintains the weather-resistant IP65 rating when you swap it out. Type 3, Type 4, Type 5. It has a pre-installed mount, a photocell, a shorting cap, and it's power, color, selectable, 3K, 4K, 5K, variety of wattages, everything you need in an area light.
Greg, can you add an endorsement to that? Have you purchased this product and seen it deployed in the field?
I can add an endorsement, and yes, I have, and have done it multiple times now. And it's a great source for where you're in a site where you're it's at a Type 3 or Type 4 or Type 5. You don't really need to know anymore in pre-order. You can just get it. Comes with it. Now you look at it and say, okay, let's do 3 on that one, 5 on that, 4 on that. It's all the same fixture looking for the customer, but from our end, 1.
So go to KeystoneTech.com, folks. That's right, KeystoneTech.com. I got marbles in my mouth today. Greg Garrick, Light Made Easy, the Big Easy, and of course, National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, coming hot right out of St. Paul, Minnesota. That's where our office is, but our convention is in Dallas, Texas, folks. That's right. Dallas, Texas, September. Check it out on NAILD.org. And of course, if you got a warehouse with light bulbs in it, you got to join NAILD.org. Nick Mesler, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Yeah, great to be here. Big fan of the show. It's an honor to be on here. Good to see you all.
You too. Hey, we're going to talk a little about this Evari Lux. I was looking on your website before the call here, and that's some pretty wild stuff you've got going. It's like a Google Earth combined with photometrics, 3D, all the action. Give us a breakdown on what you guys do and what you're all about.
Yeah, so Evari is just about 12 years old as a company. We're a small business. I think there's only about 11 office staff, and then we'll have anywhere between 5 to 50 field crew personnel working all over the U.S. collecting data. We got plugged into got started as a business just at the beginning of the big LED conversion swap that really took across the U.S. And we just found ourselves a niche. I mean, we're a small GIS shop. We do just all the traditional GIS work that you can think of, but we found ourselves this niche in street lighting, and working on we've audited over 3 million streetlights to date, working in cities all over the U.S., more rural counties as well. And as part of that effort, we were collecting a lot of data, and what we realized was that that GIS has a lot to offer in the street lighting world. The platform itself it really lends itself the ability to analyze illumination with the added benefit of things like topography, but then really being able to cross-reference that with other data. So if you're looking at City of Philadelphia, for example, we just wrapped up a big streetlight audit for the City of Philadelphia and helped with some of their design work. They have 130,000 streetlights.
Exactly.
If you want to know, they're just a little over that, 133,200 and something, but okay. Within their right of way, that's what they're looking at. So if you're the City of Philadelphia, you have streetlights, you have other priorities. You have things like traffic collisions, you have pedestrian safety, you have environmental concerns, you have community activation. You have quiet suburbs that you don't want necessarily a lot of light trespass. So if your question is where are all these things happening in relation to the street lighting, GIS is the platform to do that. It's inherently a spatial question. All that data already lives in GIS. So taking the illumination surface of a city out of traditional software and putting it in a GIS system was the nexus to identifying where these competing priorities were, and effectively a way to bridge that gap in understanding. So what we can do with Evari software is take all 133,000 streetlights in the city of Philadelphia and build an entire scaled model of the city's streetlight illumination surface. So we can evaluate very quickly, just ask the computer a question, where is all the light trespass occurring? And we can build a layer that tells you exactly where that is. Where is our highest areas of our 5-year collision history? Where's our pedestrian collisions happening? Where are bicycle collisions happening? We can evaluate the street lighting right in the same platform and then make decisions about how we can improve the street lighting to meet these various needs that street lighting provides. Obviously, energy savings, along with LEDs has been a huge benefit. I mean, not just to the cities that we work with, but to the ratepayer, the taxpayer, everyone benefits. But there's also all these other intrinsic values of lighting, and being able to capitalize on the social benefits of those is really where we're trying to take this GIS system, this GIS platform, and deliver a lot of value.
Can your system, I know the difference between a municipal street light and a street light in a pole light in a parking lot?
Yeah, so I mean, we collect all this data in these cities we work with, and a lot of cities already have pretty good data to start with. But all we need to know is where the light is, height of the pole, mast arm angle and direction, and what your IES file is. So the illumination surface is specific to every IES file. It's no different than more traditional lighting design software. So
how do you know where the
yeah,
poles are, though? How do you know where they, like, you can see them on Google Street View or whatever?
In a GIS system, they have a latitude and longitude, an XY data point. So we know exactly where that is on the Earth. If that data doesn't exist, we have field crews that go out and collect that information. So
Wow.
we had a team of about 30 people combing the streets of the city of Philadelphia, collecting that data. We just wrapped up a big project for the city of Boston. We're doing some work in the Bay Area right now. That's what we do at Evari.
Wow.
So who's asking for these audits? Like, I know the city's paying for it. You can't have 30 people running around for free, but who's asking for them?
Yeah, so it takes a number of formats, and I'd say what we've most typically been involved in is these large LED conversions. We work with a lot of ESCO firms. I'll give you some kind of ballpark numbers to give you the scale, but a Philadelphia or Boston size city, if they're doing an LED conversion, you're looking at somewhere on the order of a construction project of $60-70 million. And just with any construction project, you're looking at a contingency of, say, 10%. I mean, if you're one of these cities, you have streetlights, but you don't necessarily know where, you don't know what the conditions are, you might not know what kind of fixture you have. So being able to collect all that data cuts down overall project contingency by about half and reduces the order that you're going to have to make for those LEDs. It reduces the installation to effectively zero. So if you have a contingency of 10%, you're looking at $6-7 million. But if you can cut that in half, that upfront investment for us to go do the field audit or do that inventory work, your ROI is 3-4 times of what you put into it. So that's normally where we're brought in. We get brought in for joint pole use audits from time to time. We get brought in if there's disagreement with the utility or the municipality on, if their bill is fair. We'll get brought in to help do that, do the math on that, actually tell you what's on the ground, what's illuminating the roads in your city. So that's typically where we find ourselves.
And you're doing it for their existing lighting and then also what it will be when they change?
Right. Yeah. So what's cool about it is that we can run a model of the existing lighting and compare that to what the proposed lighting will look like. So if you're converting from high pressure sodium to LEDs, we can show you what the illumination surface is going to look like on the ground. We can give you a 3D model of the illumination, so you can put yourself, you could, the ability to kind of fly around your own city and evaluate what the street lighting will look like. We're hoping to do some work in the state of Pennsylvania in the near future, where we'll be comparing different manufacturers as well. So it'll give the ability for the city and the ESCO firm, several other stakeholders, the ability to make decisions on what kind of lighting is most appropriate for that location. So, I mean, I think in most cities you find that they really have a typical space process. They might identify 7 or 8, give or take, different typical streetlights for the entire city. But in an instance where you have an unusual situation like a 5-leg intersection or a roundabout or a downtown commercial district, the typical lighting process just may not be the most appropriate way to evaluate that. So what we're really looking for with the software is where are these locations where you have an unusual circumstance, and where can a better lighting decision be made rather than just a typical space process.
And is that oftentimes where you find areas that are underlit and you need to add poles or add a fixture as well?
Oh yeah, or vice versa. I mean, we've run into both situations, and with this software, if we're doing a citywide model, you really only need to find 5 streetlights that you don't need, and you've made your return on investment. In a city of 50,000 streetlights, it's fairly easy to do. So yeah, it really optimizes the whole process, because I mean, doing an illumination analysis of an entire city in a traditional method is a big lift. That's a difficult process. It's very time intensive. We can run a whole model of a city overnight. Press play, come back the next morning, and you have your entire illumination surface. And
As long as you have the
it's also
data.
useful as long as you have the data. Yeah, and I'd say a lot of cities are really getting serious about their data. There's numerous ways of collecting data. We do everything on foot because you get a really high accuracy, but LiDAR has been a big player in the game, collecting data from cameras on vehicles. They'll do a point cloud collecting all the data in the environment and then running AI models to extract where the streetlight fixtures are in 3D space. So a lot of cities are doing that data collection effort right now. It's moving out into the smaller suburbs in rural areas as well. So a lot of cities have this data already. They might, at least have 80 to 90% of it, and that's good enough to make a lot of the decisions that would be useful in their street lighting design.
So a lot of these city street lighting projects, or all of them should be at least, are competitive. So they have multiple people bidding on what product to use. How do the people that are competing, roll your service in, knowing that it's far superior to the standard way, and it probably costs more? Do they have to explain that as part of the selling point? Do you guys come into the process?
No, I don't necessarily. I don't see our stuff as a replacement to the traditional method, and there's still a lot of value there. I mean, for example, we don't do luminance. What we're really evaluating is the other intrinsic benefits of street lighting. Where's your crash history? What intersections need to be prioritized for crashes, and not necessarily look like the other intersections nearby? Where's the environmental concerns? What zoning do you have nearby, and how does the street lighting relate to that? So as far as the competitive process for choosing fixtures, we've been happy to work with different manufacturers to demonstrate what their street lighting looks like, what their proposed design might be with their own in-house lighting designers, and then demonstrate that to the city. And then they have the ability to just determine what makes the most sense for them. It really gives the ability for city officials and stakeholders to have a little more information rather than a printout of print PDF of what the illumination surface looks like. This gives you the ability to pan around in a Google Earth-like environment and really see it for what it is.
Who
So
pays
that
you? Sorry.
Oh,
Who
we
like
work with a lot of different companies. We work with a lot of different companies, a lot of different cities. And we get brought into a lot of different use cases. The big one that's really taken off is streetlight master planning. It's kind of a
so?
new
But that you're not a
wave or trend.
subcontractor. Are you a subcontractor normally brought in by another
We're often a
company?
sub we're often a subcontractor or as part of a team for a streetlight audit or an LED conversion or um,
Like what I'm
or
wondering
for a
is like
streetlight
what I'm
master
wondering.
plan.
I don't want to like without giving specifics. Like, would
Sure.
you send an invoice to Paducah, Kentucky, or would you send an invoice to Joe's engineering firm in Paducah, Kentucky, or Esco firm in Paducah? Like, how does your business model work?
We'll work with all three. I
Oh,
mean,
okay. Yeah.
we've led streetlight inventory projects. We did some work down in Lubbock, Texas, and we were the prime consultant on that project.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I mean, we're very flexible.
mm.
Our we're we're there's some people that hate us. They think our software is too new and unknown, but there's other people that really love us, and they see the value of what we're doing, and we're happy to be a part of the solution.
Do you
Have you been
license the
brought
software?
in?
So fine, Greg. You go. I'll wait.
Okay, I'm just saying, have you ever been brought in after the fact, where they've done the LED lighting, now they have issues, and they want you guys to go analyze that?
I'll say we haven't. We
Hmm.
certainly could. I mean, after the audit is, it's fairly after the conversion happens, it's fairly easy because you know exactly what kind of fixtures were put in. You know exactly what the IS files are. There's a lot of that investigative guesswork is taken out of the equation. So it certainly makes things a lot easier after a recent LED conversion. So, and I mean, that's, something that we also provide as a service is helping track installation work and verifying that the equipment that was intended to put it in was put in correctly. Um, so yeah, anything that's touches a streetlight, and if it can be mapped or if there's data associated, we've likely been involved with it.
Is it my turn now, Greg, or is it the Get a Grip on Greg
Now
show?
it's your turn. Yeah, you go
Okay,
ahead.
just checking. Just want to make sure. Okay, before I move on here, do you guys lease the software? Or do you guys have licenses for the software to other professionals?
No, we provide it as a service. So we work one on one with cities or ESCO firms or lighting design firms and build something out together. The
So
process
it's
to
all about
develop this.
you, eh?
Oh yeah, I mean the process to run this takes a supercomputer.
Mm,
It's not something you could run on your laptop or your
okay.
desktop at the office. We have a cloud based system that runs through Amazon Web Services that uses a supercomputer to do all these calculations. If you're looking at 130,000 streetlights, that's a big ask for data, a big ask for the hardware that you
Mm.
need. Um, but ultimately, we deliver that over the web, so the ability to use it is a fair amount of dexterity. We can make it publicly available. So if you want your citizens of the city to see what the illumination is going to look like, post LED conversion or post design, we can provide that too.
So
So
he's keeping his software a secret, and he only gives out the results of the software. I get it. It's all about you. Okay. Um,
well, it's something we're looking into. I think this software is still fairly new.
yeah, I think it might be
It's
more valuable as a software subscription to people than it is you guys doing all the work. Because I have a ton of ideas of how your software could be used. What is it? You guys project it in 3 dimensions so you can see the three
we do,
dimensional?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
that's
you
really
have an
interesting.
illumination volume, yeah.
Yeah.
And for people that are non-technical folks, I mean, when we look at an illumination contours, we know what the lux value means. We know what the candela value is. We understand that. But if you're you know a city politician or an everyday citizen, that might not make a lot of sense. But if you could see that in 3D, see where the abstract concept of lighting actually lives in 3D space. It's a lot more tangible and something that you
Yeah.
can parlay that information to a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, there's many applications for your software outside of what you're doing, just on that ability alone. Um, my question: You've done a lot of presentations about safety, and
Sure.
I'm also the host of the Restoring Darkness podcast, and that's a
Hmm.
podcast that is focused on darkness restoration and night preservation. Um, and I want to ask you a question: Does
Sure.
more light mean more safety?
No, not necessarily. In some instances, too much lighting could be, if you overlight an intersection, if you light bomb an intersection, that could actually be a net negative on safety. And in reality, there's only certain areas that need potentially more lighting, but I'd say most of the United States doesn't need a lot of lighting. If you're in a quiet residential community, you don't necessarily want a lot of lighting. You don't want the light trespass. You don't want light shining in a window. You don't want to create the perception of an environment that it's inviting to come into for people that you know
Yeah,
don't
the
need to be
prison
in that
yard
quiet
is not
residential
so
neighborhood.
beautiful. The prison yard lighting systems that
No, it
we
isn't.
have, it's not so nice.
That's
The
true.
one of the things that I've often discussed is and I know this is not what your software does, but I think it relates to it, and you'll see what I'm saying in a second here.
Sure.
Is that the advanced lighting control systems, or IoT, put your acronym on it, whatever, connected lighting controls, whatever you want to talk about. That group has a hard time making a solid business case on the interior environment, because you can do most of what that stuff can do with stupid dumb controls in terms of energy savings. Um, there's complexity
Hmm.
issues, whether or not building managers actually want these fancy lighting controls, or it depends on who's paying the energy bill and so on and so forth. But
Sure.
I've always been an advocate that the number one place for lighting controls, which is so obvious to me, is in municipal street lighting. Um, you
Yeah,
know, and
definitely.
I, it's just such an obvious business case. There's so many reasons why, cities may want, to be able to connect to their street lights. Some of them are Orwellian, but others are quite practical, and considering darkness restoration, light pollution, these other things, that being able to dim, control, warm different areas of the city, for bird migrate, for there's so many different ecological reasons and so on and so forth. What's Ivari's position on that, and yours personally, in terms of deploying that technology there rather than in the interior environment?
Yeah, personally, 100% agree. I think a lot of the cities we work with, um, it's checkerboard. Some are more progressive than others, but I think a lot of what we see is, as far as lighting control systems go, is just counteracting the light loss factors. So they're going to turn the light up 2% every year to combat that. And I think that's the real, the minimum case for what lighting controls can do. I think that really just scratches the surface. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's, yeah, we definitely agree. We're looking into developing our own front end software for an FME that can plug into existing lighting control software, but can be interfaced through a GIS. So if you want to make a lighting change in one part of the city, it can reduce the lighting, whether that's done manually or automated. I think for things such as traffic safety, that's something I'm obviously very passionate about. We know, for example, that about 50% of pedestrian and bicycle collisions happen during the non-daytime hours, and about half of that, so about a quarter of all pedestrian and bicycle collisions, occur within about a 45-minute period after the sun sets. So this is really the critical time period. If we're going to
Mm.
focus on transportation safety for lighting, you want as much lighting as you can get for transportation safety reasons during that time period. But in the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you don't. There's just far fewer pedestrian bicycling collisions, fewer collisions in general. It's really the
Mm.
lowest part of the day where you see a lot of collisions. So your intersections that are lit for safety purposes, you could scale that back. So you can um, improve the energy savings. You can improve the overall environment, and you can reduce the amount of light pollution that you're getting out of it and restoring that darkness.
I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things that believe me, when we advocate for darkness restoration and preservation, night preservation, we're not talking about less lighting. We're not talking
Right.
about no
Yeah.
lighting. We're talking about smart lighting. We're talking about changing every street light in the entire continent so that when you look at North America from space, it's not a big light pollution bomb. Um, and the lighting industry is very well positioned, but from my opinion, Greg, maybe just quickly to you, Greg, are people in the lighting industry aware of the massive opportunity that's in front of us with respect to light pollution abatement? I would say no. What would you say before we throw it
No.
over to Nick? Yeah, they're
I
just
mean,
they
we've had
don't.
a lot of discussions, and it's that bigger picture. They don't really think about. It's all the other little details. Like, think big, and then we'll get the details worked out. That's where we
Yeah,
need to
like
get to,
light pollution abatement is a massive opportunity for the lighting industry.
for sure.
Like, come on, it's such a huge opportunity. And the fact that we can't find anyone that's working on a municipal lighting control system to dim tune based on bat migrations, bird migrations, turtle season. Come on, let's get smart and intelligent. And then you talk about this twilight thing. I couldn't agree with you more. It's so obvious that we need electric light when the sun goes down till about midnight, and then after that, we're just wasting energy and creating light pollution in the vast majority of these highways and
Mm-hmm.
all these areas. And it's a real tragedy, Nick. Can we get out of it? Can we get? I think we can, but how do we convince everybody? I don't know. I'm just throwing it over to you now.
I certainly think so. I mean, we did a project for the state of California with local biologists in the area. They're putting in a land bridge over US 101, I believe, and the purpose of that is for mountain lion crossing. I believe it's just north of Los Angeles where they're putting that in. So as part of that, they obviously animals are very sensitive to lighting. They need to understand where the lighting is falling, and down to a very, very minute level. I mean, you're looking at less than 0.1 lux of value. So our software can identify this because it's inherently a spatial question, and the topography of this is also plays a big piece in that. It's a very mountainous terrain that you're working in.
Mm-hmm.
So being that it's in a GIS, it naturally uses that information to identify where your illumination surface is. And I agree. I think people are starting to catch on.
But the lighting industry isn't. That's my point. It's
I
like,
think they aren't. Yeah.
are they? Yeah. I
I
mean, tell me why you
I
think
don't
that.
think I don't think they are. I think a lot of the local municipalities are starting to. I think these other groups, groups that are centered around reducing light pollution and preserving darkness. There's several of them. They're starting to be the more vocal ones, and the cities are starting to pick up on that. I mean, Pittsburgh, for example, is poised to be the largest dark sky city in America. That's they're moving towards that goal, and I think that's it's very reasonable to balance dark skies and balance other priorities like traffic safety. You just have to identify where that is, and that's why the typical process just doesn't work in all cases. It's really not one size fits all. In some areas, if you're looking at most residential communities, you could put the same street light in most cases, but at intersections of high collision or other areas that you have a specific need that's not being addressed by your typical application, you need better lighting design there. And I think cities are starting to pick up on that. They're starting to ask for it. They're starting to ask for that more fine-tooth comb, reviewing specific applications. And they're moving towards that. And I think streetlight master planning is going to be the nexus for really setting that into stone. And I think we had a couple plans maybe a decade ago now. I know Seattle had a streetlight master plan. Portland had one. And then it kind of died out. And I think we'll pick that up again. I mean, we plan for just about everything else. We plan our transportation elements, housing plans, street tree plans, sewer plans, but we don't have cohesive plans in most cities for street lighting. it's kind of done on a case by case basis. You don't necessarily have an overarching framework or process document that identifies what different values of that local jurisdiction should be evaluated for your street lighting design and where. In
Yeah,
this
because
part of
every
town, you
city's
might
unique
have,
in its way. Every city's unique.
exactly,
It
yeah,
has its own neighborhoods. It has its own vibe. Like some areas, in Toronto that I would think of, you want to be very careful that you don't light it up like a prison yard. You
sure,
know,
yeah,
it's just a beautiful neighborhood. You want to keep it warm and you want to keep the fixtures decorative. And people, well, that's not fair or whatever. But you know what's every area is a little bit different. It has its unique needs. And so you're saying
hmm
that most
yeah,
cities are not considering this. I would say for sure they're not considering it. When you look at the way they've done
yeah,
LED street lighting, Greg, they're just pulling off a
Yeah.
Cobra head and popping on a 50K LED 100-watt light
yeah.
fixture, and oh, we're great. We got a rebate and we got energy savings. And they're not really. First of all, a lot of LED street lights are really ugly, man. Like,
Purple.
come on. Or
Yeah,
well, that's
the
Got
the
purple.
purple.
Yeah.
no, but I mean, like you look at these, like you have a pole, and then you look at this thing, and it's like somebody put like a laptop computer on the end of the pole. And it
Mm.
just looks like crap. I mean, I look at it, I'm like, it looks like nobody ever thought of the beauty. Nobody ever thought of the look of the light fixture. They just put laptop computers in the place of Cobra heads, and it really doesn't suit the fixture. It doesn't look very nice. And I think you're absolutely
Mhm.
right. These masked cities need to think about this from so many different aspects, Nick. It's super important.
Yeah, a cohesive plan, will connect the dots, and I think that that's a trend we're starting to see. I mean, Salt Lake City just did their streetlight master plan. We're going to be involved with some work in the Bay Area and in Southern California for developing streetlight master plans. And I think it's a trend that we're going to start seeing. Over the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a lot of cities go down this route. And I think Europe has done a good job at developing cohesive plans. I think they really pioneered it, and it's just starting to pick up in the U.S. And it presents a lot of opportunity for the industry. I mean, you talked about our sponsor here earlier today. They have a street light that can do it all, and I think a lot of cities would be really interested in that because they might have put a fixture up and find that it's just wasn't right for the
Yeah.
need, or they might come by 3 years from now and put a bikeway in or do a road diet or change the landscape of the intersection. And now the street lighting also needs to be changed. But if you already got a fixture in there that you could just tweak, then you're good to go. So I think having that flexibility and that more forward thinking planning rather than just doing a one for one conversion is possible now. You couldn't do that quite as easily with more traditional high pressure sodium fixtures. So it's a new era in the industry, and I think we're feeling it out as we go.
There's another item that I read about that you do is night score. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Night Score it's a free service that we're building. So if you go to nightscore.com, you can pan around in it. And the purpose of that is we're trying to build a nighttime collision database and identify where the priority areas are on a state to state basis. So it's something we're building across the US. We've got about half the states put together now. And what you can do is you can pan around and identify within your own state where are the highest percentages of nighttime collisions. And the reason we're doing this is as my time in the traffic engineering world, I worked on a lot of Vision Zero documentation and safety plans. It became very obvious. I mean, very early on in my career, I remember, my first year into my career, looking through, collision data, hundreds of thousands of records. I was finding a lot of data that was just wrong and was
Hmm.
incorrect. I mean, this is collision data that we're taking in on a state by state basis, and different pieces of it are incorrect. And I think it's something the traffic engineering world definitely knows about and haven't had a good way of addressing it because they're not involved in the collection of it. I mean, if you find yourself in a collision and the person taking in the report and taking all this information down is an on-scene officer. So, for example, something like what was the ambient lighting condition during the collision? Did it happen at night? Happen during the day, dusk on? That's a very low priority for an on-scene officer when they're collecting
Mm.
that data. So things that they're going to prioritize is obviously, people that are hurt, collecting information on the collision itself, what time the collision occurred. time is something that's very important, obviously, for insurance reasons. So what we're able to do is we're able to in a GIS process reevaluate and re-index collision data on a statewide basis for what the actual ambient lighting condition was. And what we found was that about 20 to 25% of collisions were incorrectly indexed to day, nighttime, or dusk dawn. And for particularly, we're finding that most data sets identified that only 2% of collisions happen during dusk or dawn, when in reality, we're finding that it was closer to 25%. So ultimately, 80 to 90% of dusk dawn collisions were being incorrectly attributed to day or night. So there's a huge problem here, but the data wasn't representing that accurately.
So you're
There's a
saying they
huge
didn't have a
problem that
category
people
for
aren't aware of.
dusk. So you're saying they didn't have a category for dusk or dawn. They just had
They
night
do
or
have a
day.
category.
Oh, okay.
They do have a category, but it was being incorrectly attributed. It was normal.
Okay.
I mean, for most people, when is dusk dawn?
Yeah, sure.
When is day night? It's subjective. You know, when the sun
Sure.
rises, you know, what your definition, my definition, you know, it may not line up. But there's a scientific definition of it, and we can determine that based on the date and time and where that collision occurred in latitude, longitude terms. So we were able to re-index that collision data.
Do you know if it was
We found
cloudy?
that. Yeah, we
Can
can
you check
find
the
that.
weather?
Normally, that's something we can. That's something that's normally taken down in a collision report, so we can index that information too.
Well,
And that's obviously a lot less subjective too. You know if it's cloudy or not, but
Mm.
whether it's happened, you know, just after the sunset, right before the sunset, if you can't see the sun below the horizon, you won't know the answer to that.
and what are you planning to do with this data once you collect it all?
So, I mean, we plan on doing a couple things with it. I mean, really, you know, we're interested in just providing this as a service to the traffic safety world. We think there's a big problem here that isn't being addressed. You know, there's things like shouldering of street lights, where they'll slowly have them come on during the dusk period of the day. That might not be the best approach. What we found was very interesting was that during sunset, just after sunset, that 45-minute period is the most dangerous part of the day to be a pedestrian or a cyclist. It's the most likely time that you're going to get hit by a car. Interestingly, though, the morning time doesn't have that same spike. So during dawn, just as the sun is coming up, you don't see that same pattern. So shouldering during the dawn might make a lot of sense, but for the dusk time period, probably not. The data just doesn't support that. But I mean, it's, you know, to no fault of the lighting industry, the data was wrong. They were making decisions based on bad data. They weren't seeing this huge spike in collisions during the dusk dawn time period. So that's the other thing that we're doing is that we go to a lot of conferences to talk about this specific subject matter and just make it known that there's this issue in the industry and that the traffic engineering world, the sheriff's department and local police departments that collect this data need to develop a way to help resolve this problem so that our data is better and that we can make better decisions based on it.
You know, you could have a system. You could have a system where the system was allowed the light to come on at a much higher lumen level or light level with a 5,000 Kelvin, and you know it was adjusted to know the ambient sun lighting. So it because what's happening at dusk and dawn
Right.
is the same thing as what happens when people with older eyes come out of a tunnel that's well lit into a dark road. Their eyes take a long time to adjust because of the changes in light. And so at sunset,
Yeah.
what you're seeing is a fast reduction of light. It speeds up as the sun sets, the light goes down faster and faster and faster. And what's happening is that people's eyes are perhaps not adjusted to that light level.
Right.
And
Yeah.
because if it was just the light level or something, I think it's an adjustment of the human eye that's what's happening in that scenario is that people can't see as well, literally. Like they just can't see
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
Maybe the traffic's busier too, but I think, if they could see better, there would be less accidents. And so you could have lights that were really bright at a certain time and then warmed and dimmed as the night went on, and there was less traffic on the road or what have you. This is right in front of us. This is not an engineering issue or a product development, but it's a product development issue, not a engineering or research issue. We have the technology to be able to do this right now, Nick. it's available to
Yeah,
us.
I agree. I think that's something that, lighting controls should look out for. I think in a lot of cases, the cities they kind of have to ask for it. And, if they don't know that it's available to them, they just might not get it. I think as an
Is
industry,
is it available?
we're
I don't know if it is available. I know that the technology to do it is for sure exists. I don't know if there's a company that can
sure.
go to a municipality and say use our Lightwise program, which will do
I,
this and that if you based on this design, and I don't think that exists.
I'm certain it doesn't exist in the field yet, but I think we certainly could do it. I mean, if we can do shouldering, for streetlights, you have a photometric cell that tells you, okay, it's time to turn the streetlight on. We're going to turn it on slowly. You could just quite do the opposite.
Sure.
Just start it out really bright and then dim it down to the level that it's intended to be. Once you've reached nighttime conditions, you're out of that astronomical twilight period. So I think it's something that could easily be done. You just have to implement it. Frankly,
Whew. This was a heck of a podcast for me, Nick. I really enjoyed it. The first thing we got
yeah.
to do
Likewise,
is stop making purple street lights, Greg Eric. Like, that would be a good start. It's like, don't get too ambitious, lighting industry, but please, I really think that the lighting controls folks need to get involved in the municipal street light. Nick, you have any final thoughts for the Get a Grip on Lighting listeners?
I'll say two things. I'd say lighting controls are the next big thing. LED, 75% of streetlights are already LED. A lot of those cost savings have already been done. A lot of cities are looking for the next way to convert their streetlights into the next era of LEDs, and controls is what I think will be part of that. So the industry, that's what I'd look out for. If you're a municipality or a utility company, streetlight master plans. That's the next big thing. How can you develop a cohesive plan for your street lighting, just as we plan for everything else? And if you have time, evarilux.com, nightscore.com. Gentlemen, it was excellent being here. Thank you so much.
No problem. And before you go, we're going to have to send another invoice for Keystone because that's the first guest to ever give them an endorsement right in the middle of the show. Go to KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. The Big Easy, Light Made Easy. Check them out. Their optic swap, all that kind of thing. And, of course, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Join us in Dallas, Texas. That's right. Bring your favorite jersey. Mine will be Toronto Argonauts. Yeah, 3-down football, baby. Yeah, it's going to be real hot. And other than that, we say thanks to Nick Mesler. All his websites and all that are on the getagriponlighting.com website. So if you listen to this, you want to check them out, just go to getagriponlighting.com. But for right now, signing off. Bye for now.